Through Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Aye, folks, there you go. Like a wee plug for the March in Air, don't forget there. I've already booked up my tickets, my plane, my lot. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you there. We should try and smash the crowd that we had at Bannockburn. Let's show them that we mean business. We, the Scottish United. Although it's Hollybags time, and I've had a wee holiday myself in France here for 6 days. It was quite good. It seemed like 6 days. Food, wine, wonderful. But there's still plenty happening. So we've got the whole gang here, and we're going to have a wee chat about it because we've got to give you your weekly sharing of information and how we see it here through a Scottish prism. So, of course, we've got over your man from North Dakota, the Coatbridge Cavalier himself, Mr. Boswell. How are you, my dear friend?
Oh, all is well, I have to say. I say my daughter Daisy's still here, so having a great time. Although I'm reminded how youth has its advantages and staying up and partying when I can't just handle it anymore.
I can't remember who was it said that. I can't remember who it was.
Youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah, youth is wasted on the young indeed. No doubt someone in the comments below will be telling us exactly who said that. And they're up in Clickmannanshire talking of youths, the young Miss Eva Comrie.
Hi, Roddy.
Smooth talker or what, Eva? What am I like?
Yes, it's been another quick week in this summer of independence. So with the Equalities Group in Alba, I've been booking events that are going to be running as we take our Equalities Roadshow into Fife and Perthshire. So between the 20th of July and the 3rd of August, we're running 4 events on Scottish independence, Scotland United, and our equalities agenda, with a view to taking that right across the whole of Scotland into late summer and early autumn. So thanks for letting me have that plug, Roddy.
Absolutely. Just send me the check. And down there on the borders are Yvonne. How are you, my friend Yvonne?
Well, I'm confused. I'm told, we should all be going for Scottish United and going, yay! And then I saw the results of the SNP losing more than a quarter of their vote in East Kilbride, and I went, yay! And one of those is wrong. I need to be educated.
Well, this is the very place to be, because we may have some answers for you. And our doyen from Edinburgh is with us, of course, Mr. Lloyd Conan.
Hi there, Roddy. Lovely to see you.
Nice to have you back, my friend.
Yeah.
You didn't think you were going to win a summer holiday, did you? You didn't think we were going to let you go.
Until I looked at my messages today, and found out I was working.
Yeah, well, we're all going to be doing that. If I've got to work, everyone's got to work. Simple as that.
Yep.
And it has been quite a week. Just at the end of last week's show, I had a wee rant about Nigel Farage's bank account being closed. And some people reminded me, of course, that the exact same had happened to Stu Campbell. And yet I was aware of that. But the reason why I singled out Nigel Farage was because if I'd said just Stu Campbell, you said, well, he's one of yours, what do you expect? And I don't think it had the same effect. But it's a disgrace what happened to Stu for his political beliefs as well. And there can be no other excuse for it. But again, a new one this week, which is the Leslie Sawyers, who, Eva, you're our equalities woman. She is if I got this right, the Equalities and Human Rights Commissioner. Had a bank account for 32 years in the Royal Bank of Scotland, and they've closed it down. They don't want our business. It's getting a wee bit naughty and nasty, this kind of cancelling, is it not?
Terribly much so, and it's starting to look like it's people who are gender critical who are being targeted. So I await with interest to see what, if any, steps the Royal Bank of Scotland might take, because I've banked with them for decades. If they start to take similar action against gender critical people and they don't come to me, I'll be very disappointed. But I think that those people whose accounts have been closed without explanation have a very good case in law in respect of the Equality Act and protected beliefs. So I'd like to see some of them enforcing those rights. I'm particularly hoping that Stuart Campbell does, because he appears to have a pretty straightforward case. I hope that's right, because it's just a slippery slope and it's completely unacceptable in this modern democratic world.
Alleged democratic world. But this is the thing, Yvonne, they're trying to push us all into a digital age, no more cash, just everything's got to be digital. And this just shows you how dangerous it can be. Because today it's Nigel Farage and Stuart Campbell and Leslie Sowers, but tomorrow it could be anyone, it could be someone. While I disagree with their action, these people are just stop oil now. It could be because you're in a CND march. It could be because you disagree with the government's policy on immigration or anything. If they decide, they can just take you out. No bank account, no banking. You can't function.
Well, it's, welcome to the world that Muslims have been living in for the last 2 decades. The World Uyghur Congress, they had their bank transfers blocked. These are the Chinese Muslims who have incurred the wrath of Beijing. But I used to support a little Palestinian charity called Interpal, and they had their banks closed down. And in the end, they had to get the support of the Bank of England to be able to write out a check or guarantee anything. And the Anas Al-Tikriti, who I think you had on one of your shows a few weeks ago, who's the chief exec of the Cordoba Foundation, he lost his bank account as well. Again, no reason given, the same as Finsbury Park Mosque, stripped of its account. And they were all falsely listed as terrorist organizations. Mm. And the investigative Tory journalist, Peter Oborne, he went right the way back and found that all these decisions made are made by the American banks. And it's very, very sinister. I mean, why Wings Stuart Campbell has been blacklisted, who knows? But he needs to find out, because if he's been terror blacklisted, he needs to find out why.
Yeah, but they just go with this weird, there is right to reserve to refuse custom. I think they go behind that. They don't have to give a reason.
But it's been going on for years. It's only because it's happened to Nigel Farage and he knows how to make his mouth go that the media have now jumped on it. But what I find particularly disturbing is that trans activists are popping up and appear to be influencing the decision-making over whether or not to give somebody a bank, allow them to operate without a bank account. It really is very Big Brother and very sinister.
Yeah, I got a cheeky letter from my bank and put my overdraft, and I said to any more of their cheek, I'd take my overdraft elsewhere. How dare they? But Lloyd, this is it isn't anything new, because if we look actually at what the European Union and the US are doing to anyone who's not coming out with the narrative of Russia bad, Ukraine good, total victory. It's happened. I mean, there's a guy called Graham Phillips, who's a London boy, who's had all his accounts frozen, all his direct debits stopped, all his money taken off from a London boy because he's in the Donbass reporting from the other side. Jason Hinkle, another chap who's an American who does a show, who's had his, all these adverts taken off him at YouTube because again he's not given the saying the things they want. I believe the Duran have had problems as well, and Redacted and other ones who are not towing the narrative of the establishment. It really is quite sinister.
It's very sinister, and the ripples coming out of the NATO-Russian war are quite terrible. And I read this morning, I was contacted by friends in a Kurdish organisation there has been a clampdown, particularly in Sweden. In Sweden, it's always been a place of safety, particularly for people from the PKK. They've been well received in Sweden, but just in this last week, there have been major moves by the Swedish security forces and the Swedish banks to close down all the Kurdish accounts, individual and collective accounts. And there have also been a huge number of arrests. And this appears to be because of a statement from the Swedish Foreign Ministry that Sweden is under pressure from Turkey to take action against the Kurds. And then if they take that action, then Turkey will support Sweden's new membership of NATO. These are the ramifications of this war. The other war, of course, that's affecting bank accounts in this country is the gender critical war. And it's clear that the networks of those who are within that Stonewall kind of ideology, that those networks are now clearly showing themselves to be operative within the banks. That was obvious when you saw the number of banks and insurance companies that were involved in the patronising of various pride marches across the country. It's a dangerous precedent when networks of people operating in such an area as banking can apply their political views and decide on the basis of their political views who's an acceptable customer or not. This does not bode well for the future. And no matter what anyone says, and I saw a lot of stuff online about Farage, whether it's Farage or anyone else you don't like, it doesn't matter. It could be you tomorrow. That's the reality of a lack of freedom of speech and a lack of freedom of access to services. It can happen to you.
Yeah, that's it. First they came for the communists, and I said nothing. It's the exact same thing.
Yes.
But Phil, this cancelling and this taking away of cash and doing this to nations and to individuals, we must resist digitalization at all costs and keep using cash.
Absolutely. It's something actually I touched on last week, because this is an Orwellian nightmare come true. And it goes beyond what we've talked about, because what we're seeing now is there's a push currently by the Tories towards central bank digital currencies. And we really need to pay attention here, because what a CBDC can do, it can control what the currency is spent on. You can program the spending on the currency. So not only they're creating money out of thin air, basically you're seeing this Orwellian nightmare is manifesting before our very eyes. See Big Brother Watch on Twitter, and heads up for Jackie for highlighting this one to me. But the central banks, the people who run them, are not our friends. They're our enemies and should be treated as such. I'm in the States, and I touched on this before, the Declaration of Independence, which was much of the principles laid out in the UK, Magna Carta, our Declaration of Birth, Claim of Right, etc. And the US Constitution was cited by Thomas Jefferson as missing one piece. The founding fathers warned against central banking, with Thomas Jefferson going far as to say that he thought a prohibition against central banking was the only thing that was missing. So yes, Roddy, use cash and do as little as possible through the banks. And we have been warned time and time again. Watch It's a Wonderful Life and contrast Potter with Bailey's Building and Loan. We have been warned about this stuff, folks. So yet still we tumble headlong into this particularly nasty abyss. Wake up, folk. George Carlin also told us about it. Let's use cash, and let's actually a banking reform. It's the same as happened before. Why didn't we put the bankers in jail in the 2008 crash like Iceland did? Allow the banks to crash. These are not our friends. They're there to make money, and they don't give a damn about the people.
Yeah, they won't let the banks crash, same as they won't let the water companies crash. There's too much money to be made for too few of the people, and we're the scapegoats on it. But there's other things been happening as well. A lot of people, I'm scared to say it because there might be another resignation we don't know about. Maybe Tech, if any resignations happen, you can let us know. But either they're going down like flies. I've never known anything like it from any party, especially one with, dare I say, only so many seats. But even the Tories with 300 seats and 300 and odd, and the Labour with 200 and whatever it is, it's not the same amount of resignations for next time. There's something afoot.
There should be something afoot, because we know perfectly well that support for independence is around the 50% mark at least, and support for the SNP is hovering somewhere in the low 30s. And that is a complete reversal of where we were in 2013 and 2014. And it's shameful to see, and it's really disappointing to note the number of resignations, including those who only a week or two ago were prepared to stand on a stage in Dundee and rally the troops towards independence. But now, 6 months into the job as Deputy Westminster leader, Mary Black has announced that she's standing down because Westminster is toxic. What on earth has her party done but make a toxic atmosphere in politics in Scotland, especially in relation to the GRR and the treatment of women? So quite honestly, I am delighted to see the back of Mary Black. Her contribution to Scottish politics has been nothing less than shameful, and for her to refer to gender-critical women who require only the enforcement of their rights and respect in the context of single-sex services and spaces, to refer to us as Jeremy Hunts, displays a mentality and an attitude that has no place in modern-day Scottish politics. So I'm pleased to see the back of her. I hope that she is not planning to return to Holyrood in the foreseeable future, and I certainly hope that there is a degree of common sense within the SNP leadership now, that what they need to do is get the show on the road and look very carefully at Scotland United, rather than simply trying to save their own skins and jump out of the ship like rats before it sinks completely.
Now, you earlier, Yvonne, made a quick short reference to the East Kilbride by-election. Do we have the figures for that, Keki? There we go. Just there we go. You can see that Labour's up 13.7%. The SNP down 8.3%. They were third. They were first the last time, and now they've dropped into third. Is this enough to get them to waken up? We know, because as Eva's alluded to, we know that independence is hovering around the 50%. The only way for them to get that vote back, well, part of the way to get it is to embrace Scotland United, and instead of pushing away the Yes movement, is to bring us all in. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, the nationalist vote has dropped more than a quarter in this in this area, and it's the SNP vote has collapsed, and yet we've got those two Muppets, Humza Yousaf and Shona Robinson, sitting grinning like Cheshire cats on the front page of the Edinburgh Evening News tonight. And, they've got absolutely nothing to smile about. But quickly going back to Princess Mary Black, talking about a toxic misogynistic culture, she wants to look at herself in the mirror and remember exactly how she treated Joanna Cherry on the benches, a woman who's got twice her capacity for compassion and intelligence and character, and look at how toxic she has been with Joanna Cherry. And it's taken a bloody 8 years to find out that there's a toxic culture down there. I'm not buying this at all. Princess Mary knows that she's about to lose her seat. That's why she suddenly felt the need to go and fess up to the BBC, and that interview that she had was, you'd think she was seeing a therapist. She's lost grip on reality. She's just another fake voice. A faux working class girl, she's I'm really doing my best to try and bite my tongue, because I don't like attacking other women. It's not a sisterly thing to do, but she really will not be a great loss. And then that other bonkers colleague of hers, Kirsty Blackman, said that she was putting herself up for re-selection again. And she's tweeting this out. It looked more like a bloody threat than an announcement. And
yeah, but isn't she standing for the David Icke party next time?
Well, who knows? Well, out of curiosity, I would like to see her election leaflet and actually a form filling as well, because our last conversation in Parliament, she said she wasn't sure what gender she was. She wasn't sure. She hadn't
looked at her genitalia and couldn't work it out.
I know. I've got something for her here. It's a hand mirror. She just needs to invest in one of those. And well, anyway, we're descending down into their level now. But yes, I mean, as I say, those two, Humza Yousaf has got absolutely nothing to be laughing about. His vote has collapsed, as we actually said. I mean, aren't we sick of saying, we told you so? We told them that their vote was collapsing, and the East Kilbride West voters have shown the SNP exactly what they think. And, you know, well done, I guess, to Kirsty Williams, the Labour candidate, who won the seat after taking over 1,300 first preference votes. It would be interesting.
I can never congratulate unionists on anything, except when they retire, saying, good, getting out of my life. But
well,
dutifully, Lloyd, the day after, or 2 days after Mary came out with this, she was leaving because of the situation. The National ran the old, a future leader if she gets into Holyrood and the list. They're already showing their hand. They didn't even give it a respectable time. She's been chosen as the next chosen one.
I just think this is another example of the delusional and tiny-sized bubble that the staff at the National, the staff at SNP headquarters and the central staff in Holyrood and Westminster live in. They don't speak to real people. They don't have any interaction whatsoever. The opportunity, of course, came in East Kilbride to go and knock on some doors, but they could barely raise half a dozen people to go and help them. But if I could just go back for a second on, you know, Mary and her toxic culture, what the hell do you think Winnie had to put up with? Winnie Ewan on her own, in a much, much more toxic culture, in a much, much more toxic time. Did she run away? You know? Did she pack it in because she couldn't cope? No, she took something from it. She allowed it to build her spirit. She saw it. It was fuel to the fire for Winnie. I think Mary Black has effectively ended her political career, no matter what those children at the National believe, or indeed some of the children on the benches at Holyrood believe. Mary Black is over and done with. And the fact is, the confirmation of that would have been had she stood for election, but that's not going to happen. But just to talk about East Kilbride again, and this goes right to the heart of the culture of the current SNP. They do not see council seats as being important because you don't climb from the council up the pole when you're sliding in the opinion polls. So there's no great concentration to go there. We're dealing with people who have no political strategy or smarts. The fact of the matter is, when you're on the slide, that's the time that you need to get your people out, knocking on the doors and finding out why you're on the slide. And a by-election gives you that opportunity. Not these fake days of action that they've been having. I mean, the day of action we had in my constituency was cancelled because nobody came out. Now, this is happening right across the country. And it is because there is a failure to understand that politics is about direct eyeball-to-eyeball engagement with the electorate, most especially when you're on the slide, because that's when you need to be visible, you need to be out and about, and you need to try and give them the good message. But maybe that's just the kernel of the problem here. The SNP don't have a good message at the moment.
No, they don't. And Phil, there was another opinion poll come out this week from Survation, again confirming what Eva alluded to earlier in the show, is that the gap between those in support of independence and those who support the SNP is increasing. Now, how long before? I mean, we've got Kevin Pringle, who I always thought of as someone who is of the more intelligent side. But how long before he and a few others pull Humza aside and a few of the others and say, listen, guys, we've got a problem here, and the only way we can address it is by addressing the concerns of this 10, 12% and the people who are staying at home. What will it take to make them wise up, Phil?
I don't think that's the problem at all. The SNP management are not in control. They are being controlled. We need to stop pretending that they're going to wise up or they can do anything. They know. There's people still in the SNP that knows exactly what's going on and who controls who's pulling the strings, who's pressing the buttons. The problem here isn't the fact that these are people who have lost their way. These are people who are betraying us. They're being told what to do, and their actions, not their words, as we've said all along, is what we should be focusing on. I'm not interested in what any of them say. I watch what they do, and what they're doing is playing right into the hand of the unionists. They're destroying, and deconstructing everything that was built under the SNP that made this party what it is or what it was. Now we're at each other's throats. This is divide and rule. This is perfidious Albion. This is exactly how the British state wants it to play out and continues to call the shots. So talking to Hums is you're wasting your time even talking to these people. If the British state have got their claws into you and they're blackmailing you and they're manipulating you and you're not putting Hamza was not put in place because of his ability or his talent, because clearly he's limited, very much limited in both. What he's in for is because he'll do exactly what those who are in control want. And you go back to Mary Black, it's sad. It's really, really sad, because obviously I knew Mary and she came in. We've seen it all before. The new hottest young property, it usually doesn't work out because people don't actually know. This is a kid. What the hell are you putting a 19 or 18-year-old in politics for, with experience of 6 months in a chip shop and some charity work? What the hell are they going to tell you? They've done some theory at a university. So it doesn't usually work out. And it didn't in this case. Mary was too easily distracted from the prime directive of gaining independence. In spite of being a smart kid from a good family, as I've said before, she turned out not to be a good politician. And you look at her figures on that, they're not good. And in spite of being cited as the greatest thing since sliced bread, I mean, I know who helped her write her much-lauded maiden speech.
Yeah.
Two old SNP stalwarts. But
Yeah.
she has failed, as she was elected, like the rest of us, in 2015 to gain us independence. We failed. And she was elected against that, not her own pet project of LGBT trans rights. And so sadly, she's been a tool of the state, and she's helped create this vitriolic atmosphere in which the independence movement is eating itself. And if you continue to feed into that, you are betraying the independence movement. If you don't want to put independence first, because it's the only way we can right all these rights, and you don't believe in democracy, and you want to go off in one of these wee mermaid rants, then you don't belong in my party, in any of the parties for independence. All you're doing is serving your own ends. And you look at what happened with everything that's going on here. The election results, I mean, it's so embarrassing to be knocked into third, because I know Lisa Cameron well in East Kilbride, and you look at the councillor Salamati, he resigned his position, right, in a unionist-run council in May due to his other work commitments. These are people who are in it for themselves. This guy did not put independence or the party first. He put his own money-making business first. He shouldn't have been in there. He should not have been elected. You need to take control of your own party, SNP, and get rid of these shysters. Because Lisa Cameron's one of the good guys. I worked with her, and she's one of the best MPs we have, or principled enough. Not so principled as you'd walk away, but what do you do? Do you stay in the game and fight from within? I generally think you should, but undoubtedly this will continue. until the union control of the SNP is severed.
There can be no doubting, Eva, much as they deny it, and everyone denies it, the woke brigade have crucified the SNP, destroyed the movement. There's no doubt about it. And even this week, when there was a tremendous result for the LGB Alliance, which you keep hoping, there was one with Maria Forrester, I can't pronounce her name properly. Yeah, you would think, well, is that going to make them wiser? No. And then again, when we saw with Mr. John Nicholson and his appalling testimony at that trial, and feel free to vent your emotions on it, but they're still not accepting, even when the law says to them, they're making it as if they've lost another result, that it's all going against them just because they're the most put on minority in the world. It's a load of nonsense.
Well, it's really important to look at the decision in the LGB Alliance case for exactly what it is. There's a fantastic thread on Twitter written by Michael Foran, who's an expert in the law in this area. And what he reiterates is it's a case where Mermaids Charity took action against the Charity Commission for England and Wales and LGB Alliance. They objected to LGB Alliance being registered as a charity. But the result of the action is very clear, that Mermaids did not have the legal standing to challenge that registration. So it's almost open and shut. The decision is as plain as the nose in my face, and legal commentators who know the law and who understand what's going on have been absolutely brutal in pointing out that this was a major loss for Mermaids. That means it's also a major loss for John Nicholson. But instead of accepting that with good grace, he adds insult to injury by continuing to make a fool of himself and adding to the shambolic behaviour when he conducted himself as a witness in that action last year. What he did was, yesterday he put out a tweet saying he was a witness and that in this decision, the judges have ruled that Mermaids don't have the right to challenge LGB Alliance charitable status. That's right, that was the decision. But he goes on to say the judges were damning about the sinister alliance and its activities, including online abuse. That is not what the judges said. Roddy Dunlop, King's Counsel, has confirmed that very clearly. And I think he knows, there you go, he knows the law far better than John Nicholson can ever hope to do. So John Nicholson's tweet is not a fair, accurate report of legal proceedings. That's what we've got representing us in Oakland and South Perthshire, a man who is signally incapable of telling the truth in the context of legal proceedings, which are actually very important. So I'm glad to see this victory, because I think that the LGB Alliance do a very good job indeed in representing the interests of people who are lesbian, gay or bisexual. They wanted to run a helpline for people, a telephone line for folk to seek solace and seek support, but have spent probably £250,000 on legal expenses in this unnecessary court process, and that money could have been better spent in many other areas, helping the people who require their assistance against bigots such as John Nicholson. And the sooner he's cleared out of our parliament, the better. You're in mute, Roddy.
My next door neighbour's dog was giving it a whoopee. I forgot. I should thank you. As if on cue. Will Mermaids be liable for LGBA's legal expenses?
Not hugely likely, because it's a tribunal. But you never know. But not likely. But you'll see that the barrister Alison Bailey got an award of expenses in her tribunal today. So that was a good result for her. So I think some common sense is starting to prevail in a series of these actions, and people should slowly be getting the message that gender critical beliefs are entirely valid, no matter what the woke or certain misdirected, captured politicians might say.
As a genuine feminist to your fingertips, Yvonne, this result must have also made you feel very pleased.
Well, it did until I went on to Twitter, and as Eva's pointed out, you know, there was quite a debate still carrying on. It's over. Mermaids lost. You sunk. You've gone. You've lost. But they're trying to rewrite history. And, you know, even something as heroic as the Stonewall riots, which was a huge turning point in the history of the GB Alliance. They're still trying to, they've inserted into this really heroic action of resistance. The trans lobby have inserted trans activists into the front line of the Stonewall riots, which sounded quite an admirable thing to do until Fred Sargent, who was there on the front line, actually said, you know, sorry, you've got this wrong. There were no trans activists at the beginning of the Stonewall riots, and they certainly weren't on the front line. And he said, I know, because I was there. They're absolute fantasists, you know, and they're trying to rewrite history. A few years down the line, they'll get hold of this mermaids judges summing up, and they'll twist that as well. These people probably can't even lie straight in bed. But it is a victory for common sense. And as Eva said, you know, we've won a very significant victory, and stop attacking ordinary women because of it, and stop trying to undermine our rights, and start to try and show some bloody empathy, not just with women who do have, you know, who have had their rights undermined by this this movement. It's, the tide is turning. The game is up. What happened, going back again to the SNP by-election result? They got absolutely spanked. Why? Because they kept pushing this gender nonsense down people's throats and trying to convince them that trans women are women. They're not. If it's got a cock, it's a man. For God's sake. I'm sorry, I'm getting really angry today. I started off in full Mary Poppins mode, and now I feel like Carry On prom night.
It's what we love. We love it that way. But Lloyd, let me ask, is it, as I alluded to a couple of other court cases that have gone the way of the sensible people, is this a significant victory? Will the woke, you know, will they get pushed back? Will organisations like the Scottish Government and the Scottish Police Force and others who have bought into this nonsense start distancing themselves?
I really don't know, Roddy, because what I see here, my interpretation is this. Organisations like Mermaids and the various other organisations that have bought into the Stonewall money-making game are using effectively public money to silence their critics who do not get funded with public money in an attempt to bankrupt them so that they will not expose and continue to expose the fallacy and the anti-science nonsense that comes from these networks. And the danger here is, and this is the thing we have to really look at, is these networks go beyond the gender critical. It has developed out into, we spoke about it earlier, the banks, many third sector organizations that are not directly involved in this. But because they have nailed their colours to the Stonewall mast, they have to defend themselves, or they're likely to lose their funding. But the strange thing about it is, no one who's providing this central funding is being critical in any way of the fact that these charities are using charitable funds or central government funds to fight court cases. That's not what they're there for, but it's clearly a tactic, and it's a tactic to silence those that are critical. John Nicholson clearly is part of that. It's a clear part of it. In fact, John Nicholson probably, for me, embodies everything that has been wrong with the political discourse in Scotland in the Sturgeon years. I'll never forget his opening words at the conference in Aberdeen, which were, "Isn't this fantastic? We're the gayest party in the country." Now, I thought to myself for a second, that's an interesting observation, John, and you would know. But we're the National Party of Scotland. We represent everyone. And all I've seen from the day that he took to the stage in Aberdeen is a shift of direction whereby you get brownie points in the SNP if you find as tiny a minority as you can possibly find and then champion their rights. Now, this is all about the networks plugging into public funds, into areas where there's not enough public scrutiny. And if your politicians who are supposed to scrutinise, both at council, Scottish Parliament and Westminster Parliament level, are captured too, then these people get to run with the money. And that's what's been happening in our country for nigh on 25 years now. It's developed now to the point where it's critical. It's become obvious that this is what's going on. But what it's also showing us is this is not a matter of rejecting the ideology. There's a real serious stable cleaning needed here in the Scottish Civil Service, in the police, in the National Health Service boards. In fact, in every area of the third sector that is not dealing with working class people, you need to have a look at it, because this is being run effectively by middle class graduates who see Scottish government, Westminster government and council government as a cash cow for their ideas and for their prejudices. And we have to tackle this head on.
We do indeed, Phil. Now, the clock's running on, and there's a lot of topics I want to cover today. Just quickly on what we're discussing there, Phil, do you ask you the same question? Can you see this coming to a head and we can start putting this nonsense away?
No, because it's part of the divide and rule strategy that's been very successful for the unions. This is to have us at each other's throat is exactly where Perfidious Album want us to be, and you can just see it. There's what they want is us at our throats, and this LGBT Alliance court victory. As to the arguments and outcomes of this case, there are two camps here, and excuse the pun, but that's what they want. You look at the Pink News article, which opens with, and I'm going to quote, "A tribunal has handed down a decision on the charity status of the controversial anti-trans organisation LGBT Alliance." Who the hell are they to say that? You know, and you contrast that with the far more reasonable, in my eyes anyway, Guardian article by Amelia Gentleman of the 6th of July, and she points out that this LGBT Alliance is they're founded in October 2019, right, to campaign for the rights of same-sex attracted people, something we've all supported, by two veteran lesbian activists. This is Bev Jackson, and who as a founder member of the Gay Liberation Front in 1970, and Kate Harris, who was a volunteer fundraiser for Stonewall. These are veteran gay rights campaigners and women who have been at the forefront of evolving our tolerance and understanding how others and live and let live policy that the trans activists seem to avoid. And this is the crazy thing, because they're assuming that we're anti-trans. We're certainly not. anything but. We're compassionate human beings who want the best for all humanity. But what we won't do is compromise the rights of others for the rights of a minority, or perceived rights of a minority that have to deny basic biology to establish or substantiate their case. So no, we want to be practical, but we need to deal with the difficult issues here. And it's not going to go away, Roddy, because they've got us exactly where they want us. And anyone who plays into this is playing into the hands of the Unionists and are keeping down all Scots, something that what we're all about. We believe in the right of everybody, free speech, because it's the right within which you protect all other rights. And we need to defend Farage as much as we don't like him. We need to defend all of these people to have their say, because not only do we want to know who they are and what they think, we want to know where they are, but we must protect freedom of speech. And if you're playing in this divisive deplatforming game, you're deteriorating the rights of all Scots, and that's not acceptable.
I want to move on from this, Eva, because there's one I want to ask all four of you. At one point when we were having one of our headbanging sessions on how we wanted to move Prism forward, our Yvonne came up with an idea for an award. I think it was a weekly award or a monthly award. It wasn't a very complimentary one, but it was for, I think, the Scottish Idiot of the Week or something. I think it was something actually worse than that. We'll leave it at Scottish Idiot of the Week. But there are two contenders this week. And I'd like to start with you, Eva, to discuss. To me, the two biggest PR as a market. I know marketing guy and sales and marketing guy. Marketing is very important, and two of the biggest marketing gaffes I've ever seen, and also by the people who made the announcements, who thought they had found a fantastic route. Quickly came a cropper, and the first one was the Scottish Rugby. SRU, Scottish Rugby Union's decision to appoint our wee Ruthie Davidson, Lady Davidson, onto their board. It's gone down like a cup of hot sick, is it not, Eva?
Well, I would leave her support for the Tory party and her previous leadership of the Tories in Scotland to one side for a moment. And I would think instead of the remarks that she made about her fellow Scots, which quite frankly indicate the complete and utter contempt that she holds for the people of this country, when she thought it was funny to speak to fellow Tories, I think in Westminster, about... I think
we might have that. Do we have that, Techie?
About the Scots. Was it 9 out of 10 Scots are a burden on the state? There you go. 9 out of 10 Scots are a burden on the state. What a disgrace. She also said that usually when Scots come into the room, you have to hide the family silver. Adverse comment about Scots drinking too much. That is not the calibre of person that we want to be advising or representing the Scottish Rugby Union. It is an utter disgrace that somebody like her is allowed to say such rubbish, not only get away with it, but seem to be elevated within Scottish civic life into some position of prominence. She retired from Holyrood because she wanted to spend more time with her family, and that has in fact involved high-level appointments like this and her attendance in the House of Lords. You know, good God, what are Scots thinking about? Talk about cringe. So
well, it's definitely up there for the award.
Oh, absolutely. Did you want me to mention the other one?
Well, I'm going to come to it. I don't know what to take them separately because they're two beautiful subjects to discuss. So I'll maybe alternate them if I may, even. I'll come back to you on the second one. And I'll give you the second one to go, which was, and I know he's a good target of yours. I mean, someone you respect, Yvonne, Mr. Tommy Shepherd. Now, he came out with a belter, thinking how great he was, and he put out a tweet and he had himself photographed with it and put out saying, I'm leading the debate to get English bishops taken out of the House of Lords. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Yvonne. When I voted or saw a manifesto, I didn't see anything about English bishops being removed. I thought we sent them down there with one job in hand, which was to get his independence, not to reform the House of Lords or the House of Commons. And his wee mate, of course, one of his colleagues who wanted to be Mr. Speaker. I mean, do these guys, how remote are they from the rest of us?
Well, he's just got a long distance relationship with reality. You know, if he had done something to bring down the House of Lords, you know, that
In
would
its
be
entirety.
in its entirety, you know, rock on Tommy. But instead, what did he do? He's got rid of a few English bishops. I can't remember what the tweet said. But I just thought, you know, the Scots have this brilliant F word. And I just thought, this is it. He is the Fanny of the week. There, I've said it for you. So, I mean, really, it was just, what was he thinking? You know, he sent out this tweet. I didn't hear the cheers go up in the Eagle Inn in Coatbridge, and they've normally got the finger on the pulse there. You know, the women were on their feet and dancing to Jailhouse Rock as the cops nicked Nicola. But why on earth would anyone put out a tweet and expect to be congratulated? I thought it was satire at first. I thought he was taking the mick.
Yeah, well, you would think. I'll keep on, Tommy, and I'll come to you, Phil, about the Scottish Rugby Union, and then we'll double round again. But Lloyd, I know, you know, Tommy Shepherd's in your neck of the woods. When you saw this, did you not think, wait a minute, is it April the 1st just now or July the 1st? What's going on here? You're on mute.
I was waiting for something like this. Every time he's in trouble, he reverts back to Labour student politics of the 80s. That's his go-to place because that's where he comes from. Not to mention the fact also that as a good Presbyterian from a good private school in Northern Ireland, he's never liked bishops very much anyway. That's the light part of it. The reality is, this man is utterly and completely out of touch with the constituents here where I live, where he's our Member of Parliament. He's been a divisive, manipulative and selfish character since day one. He sees the writing on the wall. And I think maybe this plea to Labour politics is maybe the precursor to him taking a little walk across to the other side, back to his natural home. Well, not so natural. Well, it's natural now that Keir Starmer's in charge. If it had been Jeremy Corbyn, that would be nowhere near his natural home. But the fact of the matter is, with the change in the boundary, the Edinburgh Eastern seat effectively becomes the Scottish Parliament seat that Kenny McCaskill won, the Edinburgh East and Musselburgh seat. That chunk of Musselburgh that was in Kenny's seat for the Scottish Parliament is now going to be part of the Westminster seat. And if I was Tommy Shepherd, I'd be worried about two things. One, getting beat, and two, Kenny McCaskill standing.
I'm sure there might be more Anglicans in his constituency than he knows. That's the other one. Phil, we'll come to you firstly about the Scottish Rugby Union appointing Ms. Davidson. What did you make of it?
Also predictable, and it's been well articulated and covered by what Eva says, which I echo, because the cringe, the Scottish cringe, what she said about Scots is sickening. It's appalling, but she's playing right into this hand. She's one of these. It's like Gove, you know. They're like the cap doffing house jocks that they are. They're an absolute disgrace. The people of Scotland don't want anything to do with them. It's only those who are. I mean, even unionists. Oh, there's some decent ones around. They must be thinking, "Oh, come on, how can you say such a thing?" But that's where it comes from. It's they're highly critical of their supposedly own people, but the reality is, they're not us. they're not the people, the true people of Scotland. They are Scots. I'm not denying I'm not right, but one thing's for sure: they're far more like the English rulers than they are the Scots people, because that's where their loyalties lie. And the Scottish Rugby Union has always had a unionist bent and certainly heavy conservative influence. All the private schools that play rugby, etc. And it's a fantastic game, and I wouldn't tarnish the wonderful game of rugby with that.
Oh, I love it.
And there's some great people in the SRU, and there's some great players, and there are splits, and there's independent supporters as well. But
Well,
no,
just if I could interrupt you, just because Stuart Campbell did one of his polls that he does from time to time. He did one, as I said, I use it all the time. One about there's like 40% of the Rangers fans,
yes, which is
are
brilliant.
independentistas, and a third of the Celtic fans are British Unionists. And it kind of, when you put that out to them, they don't like it. Either side of sorry, 1,000 people. No, that's Salvation. They're definitely Tims, really. Very good. But he did one as well at Murray. There was Scottish rugby supporters at Murrayfield, and it was about the same at the time. It was about 40% of them were independentistas. Admitted a lot of them, the majority, like that ground I love to go to, the majority are unionists. There's still a huge chunk of, and even for that point of view, that you're going to alienate 40% of your customer base with such an appointment. It doesn't make marketing sense.
No, but that's the reality. The reality is that the people want independence, and even those who identify with what have been traditionally known as the establishment organisations. The reality is the Scots want independence. We will get it. It's the problem is the high Hegians and those in control. There's a massive influence and an over-reliance on the private schools and in Edinburgh in particular. And you're going to see this come to the fore because they're the people with the money and the power. And how you retain it is by controlling the narrative and managing the perception, and that's what's going on here.
Yeah, there's a logic to say to people, the fact of the matter is, we know as lifelong independentistas, the richer the postcode, the less likely they are to be in favour of Scottish independence. Yep. It's I'm all right, Jack, and I don't want to rock the boat because I'm okay. And that's a fact. And for the people in the working class here, the time you woke up, never mind the scarf you wear on a Saturday going to the football. That's not your life. They're laughing at you.
Exactly.
Eva, now, what was Tommy Shepherd thinking? Did he actually think that this was a vote winner?
He's completely out of touch with Scottish politics if he thinks for a minute that anybody in Scotland has the slightest bit of interest in whether bishops are sitting in the House of Lords or otherwise. It's not even a niche interest. It is a complete and utter non-entity. The things that people in Scotland talk about, the people I know, whether it's people that are, as we've said already, working class or in the poorer areas, a lot of the clients that I see at my work, people that I interview for the purposes of background reports in relation to their children, these are people that deal day in and day out with the real hard stuff in Scottish society, stuff that the Scottish government and folk like Tommy Shepherd ought to be concentrating on, such as the drugs issue, which hit the headlines today because Elena Whittam has decided to ask Westminster for permission to decriminalise personal possession of drugs. Now, unfortunately, that will become another grievance issue where the SNP will say, oh, look, we asked Westminster for the permission and they didn't give us it, throw their hands up in horror and say, what are we going to do? Well, what they should be doing is speaking properly to and listening, really listening with both ears, not cloth ears, to people with lived and living experience of drug-related issues, such as Anne-Marie Ward. What she'll tell you is, for the 18,000 problem drug users and 133,000 problematic alcohol users in the Greater Glasgow and Clyde area, this time last year there were only 23 publicly funded rehab beds. That means one person in every 6,500 will get the chance to go to rehab. Now, this decriminalisation is one very small issue, and we in Scottish civic life should not allow deflection away from what the Scottish government could actually do. Why don't they say, bugger this, let's just create safe drug consumption rooms across the country. And if Westminster doesn't like it, come and get us, because you would find that the general public would favour such a position, probably far more than they favour decriminalising drug use or drug possession as such, because there's a whole host of problems that it helps to cause. Now, what's interesting is, we spoke about postcodes. It is known, and it has been known for a very long time in Scotland, that you are 15 times more likely to die of drug-related issues in the poorer areas than you are in the richer areas. Similar position applies in relation to alcohol-related deaths and also in relation to suicide. And what we know, and we've always known, is that this is about poverty and inequality. And unless and until the Scottish Government addresses that holistically through independence and by prioritising independence, people in Scotland will continue to die and suffer unnecessarily. Shifting the onus, shifting the blame to Westminster is grievance politics. And it's high time the Scottish Government learned to stand on its own 2 feet, stop blaming Westminster, and to fight a Scottish independence campaign for all the folk out there that are suffering unnecessarily. And I add into that particularly the homeless deaths that there have been in the last couple of years, because they've hit record numbers. And the people in the main that are suffering are single white men. They're mainly the people that are dying through suicide, alcohol misuse, drug misuse, and homeless. These are the people that deserve our attention. Many of them are veterans, and you can imagine in the circumstances that they've lived through. Others have been care experienced, they've been involved with the criminal law, they've suffered from trauma, but they're all somebody's son or brother or nephew or pal or neighbour or dad. These are the people that need to be helped properly. Instead, we've got millions of pounds being flung away, for example, on minority issues. And I'm not saying that minorities ought not to be protected. Of course they should be. But we've seen the venom of the GRR bill and related matters. We've seen over and over again in Scotland money being spent in the wrong places. We talk about a poverty industry. There's a drugs industry just the same, because the government's not listening to the right people at the right time. It's high time, way beyond time, that they listened to the right folk and got it right. Because if we were independent, we could address all of these things. But this twiddling the thumbs, give us another mandate, have another push, try and get support up to 60%. Hell no. Hell mend them all. What should be happening is every single politician elected to get Scottish independence should be sitting looking at these statistics and remembering how many lives have been ruined on their watch because they didn't do the job that they were elected to do.
Here. I just do a wee anecdotal story on that. And I was discussing with my friends here before we started recording the show. I suffer from COPD, and I found that cannabis oil, THC, works very well for me. But when I go to Scotland, or I go to Poland, or I go to other countries, I can't take it with me. I was in Poland recently, as you know, for a couple of weeks, and I was struggling at the end of my trip, just walking. And within a few days I come home, being able to take that oil, I had a massive improvement. And it does make a difference, but it's priced out of people's pockets. Here legally I can grow it and make my own, and it's decriminalised cannabis. So I can have up to 3 plants of my own, as can my wife, and we can make it. And that's the way it should be, because it helps people. It's not just should not even just be about profit. Time's beating us. I want to get a couple of other topics in, if I may, Yvonne. One of them, going back to your friends in the Labour Party and Mr. Stammer, who's this week announced that they will not repeal the public order bill of the Tories. So they're into the Labour Party, don't want you standing in picket lines. They don't want you going on strike. They don't want you protesting. Is this the Labour Party you remember from your youth? You're muted. Muted. You go. You've muted yourself again.
Got this right. Oh, just stopped me from saying something there. Right. I mean, this Labour Party is nothing remotely like the Labour Party from my youth. One of my proudest days as a teenager was getting a membership card for the Labour Party. And I don't recognise the party now. It's like a pale imitation of the Tories. He stood on a platform yesterday. It's a wonder the TV wasn't knocked off the wall. He stood on a platform yesterday going on about, the working classes and class culture. And he wouldn't know a working man if he bit him on the backside. He's probably never been in a housing scheme or council estate. This weekend is the biggest event in the calendar of the working class, miners, steel workers, shipbuilders, the whole caboodle of trade unionists in the Northeast. It's the Durham Miners Gala, and he's not going. He's a disgrace. He will be absent, and this is a real slap in the face to the working classes. The mines might have gone, the shipyards might have gone, the steelworks might have gone, but the working class community is still there, and they're suffering hardships, which has driven them, God knows why, into the hands of the Tories. And of course, they all boast about this big blue wall. And what's Starmer done? Starmer has just reinforced that wall. Instead of another brick out of the wall, he's pushed another brick in. He is a bleep bleep disgrace to the Labour Party. But it's not all bad news. Jezza is going to be speaking at the Durham Miners Gala, and he's going to have, he has the love and admiration of the common people because he knows how to engage them. That stuffed shirt that's
he may have the common people in England, but he doesn't have the common people in Scotland. When he was as big an imperialist as Starmer or any other Labour leader, when he said he wouldn't allow us to have any kind of a referendum. He's
like backdoor Boris when he comes to Scotland. You don't get to know he's coming until he's been and gone.
It comes up with Corbyn, not Starmer. Corbyn said he was an imperialist as well. So.
Well, I told Jeremy Corbyn is a friend of mine, and when he became leader of the Labour Party, I was delighted for the people in England. But I did send him an email saying, don't come to Scotland. Please don't come to Scotland. Because, I can't understand this. We'll have to have a conversation maybe about it this weekend, and I'll report back to you next week, and find out why he wants independence for the Sandinistas, for the Palestinians, for the Kashmiris. United Ireland campaigned for the Chagos Islanders to get their islands back. He's right on message until it comes to Scotland. Correct. And it's like, what's up, Jezza? I'll find out. I'll make it my business for all you Prism.
You tell him Roddy's not happy with him, and unless he gets his act together, it will stay that way.
Well, I'll find out.
The clock's running. I know you will. That's the great thing. I love you so much. It's running on, Lloyd, but there's a couple of things I wanted to cover. When we did our wee programme to Winnie, or wee tribute to Winnie, you and I suddenly get cut off. It was a live show. Three of us get cut off at once. Coincidences, I don't believe in them, but we did. And you didn't get a chance to do that. But one of the things coming up, Winnie's having a memorial soon, and Alex Salmond is going to be doing the eulogy. A certain I am the greatest thing since sliced bread, first minister ever, I'm just brilliant and I've done nothing wrong, wasn't even there, is not getting anything. It kind of sums up when a great of the party, and she is the great of the party, or Winnie, she said they obviously chosen Alec, or his family, the family have chosen Alec to do the eulogy. Tells us all we need to know.
Indeed it does. Just to remind everyone, the memorial service for Winnie Young will be held in Inverness at 2:00 a week on Saturday. I think that's the 15th. And I would urge as many people as possible to go. I mean, Well, when he did for the country is, but
Yeah.
it's difficult to quantify, but it was huge. The one thing I was going to say that day we were talking, I'll do it now. If Winnie had been stalking the corridors of the Parliament over the past few years, we wouldn't have seen the mess we've got. I remember when I was in Parliament, you would hear Winnie coming down the corridor, and the first thing she would shout at you is, "Mr. Quinnan, what have you done for independence today?" And that was her regular shout on, mostly to those of us who at that time were younger. But it kept you on your toes. It was genuine. It wasn't just a greeting. It made you think, what have I done? I mean, back then in 1999, the best you could do was convert a person. You weren't going to make law, The best you could do was do a good job for your constituent. And that hopefully would bring them closer to the belief in independence. A great loss, but I hope a lot of people can make it to the service in Inverness.
And one other thing, while I've got you here, I know it's a sort of big thing for you. There was a word come out this week on Tiree, an island which is close to your heart. That there's 21 people who've got jobs there, which would help the local economy, but they can't take up their jobs because there are no housing accommodation. But you've got a backstory to that, which makes it even worse. You could share with the viewers.
Well, 44% of the homes and houses on Tiree are second homes. They're holiday lets, or they're used for a tiny part of the year. But the worst thing about this is there's actually buildings which are ex-RAF buildings dotted all over the island, which could be converted, but the MOD won't hand them over because very few people know. Tiree is an emergency airfield in the event of war for NATO. So they won't hand over those huge tracts of land where they could build houses or indeed just convert the RAF buildings. There's a solution there, but the solution is being hindered not directly by either the Islands Council or by the Scottish Government, but by the Ministry of Defence.
Thanks, Sir. I'm sure that will enlighten a lot of people and enrage a lot of people when they hear that and this goes out. Phil, last thing to you. There was another thing come out this week, COPS 27, where a huge bill for Scottish taxpayers was run up with, what I've got it here, 25 rooms in a 5-star hotel. There's a stopover first one night in Italy before moving on to Sharm el-Sheikh. And for anyone who hasn't been to Sharm el-Sheikh, let me tell you, that is, you don't go there on a 50 quid EasyJet flight. But 148 grand. That would have fed a lot of school wains over the school holidays, Phil.
Yes, it would. And the first question is, why is there 25 rooms required for a jolly? And it is a jolly. I've been to Sharm el-Sheikh. I used to live in Egypt. It's a stunning place. It's also not very cheap to get there. And so 148,000, the sum itself doesn't seem perhaps like a great deal in the big picture when you look at the budget of, say, North Lanarkshire District Council of $1 billion a year. But it's 140,000 that would be far better spent on critical services that are being cut all over the country and are most vulnerable, are suffering because of it. Then 25 clowns, self-serving, people who, it's like 1,200 quid. It's just crazy, absolutely crazy. Only the specialists on that subject need to know about it, really, COP27. And most of this is virtue signalling. They want a massive presence. They want to go in the jolly, and there's a lot of con games being played under the guise of looking after the planet, especially in green energy and playing on climate change fears. And all I would urge people to do is follow the money. And what we're also doing is playing right into the hands of the establishment. Penny Mordaunt gleefully ripped into the SNP and the Scottish independence. It's the whole movement by critiquing this 148,000 bill. And it's the taxpayer bill, and it's embarrassing. And why are we doing it? Why do we continue to walk straight into these traps? And then the answer is because we're doing what we're told. They're not smart enough, and they're not interested or focused enough on running the kind of organisation that Alec had SNP operating as. What they're doing is looking after number one, and they continue to do us down, and we need to get rid.
Yeah, it'd be different. I would say if it was somewhere where they were creating jobs, they could come back with something tangible. It'd be nice to know what they were doing there, who, as you say, who was there, what were they doing, what was their role while they were there. And it wasn't just rewards for the karate. Anyway, we've run out of time, but just a quick reminder, because as soon as we finish, we put up the Air March again on the 29th, isn't it, of July. And I hope to see you there. I'm going over myself for that one. And I've just been told, before I forget, I hear Margaret Terr, it's not been so well, who's a great fan of this show and a great nationalist and someone who we appreciate and love very much. Get better soon, Margaret. We're all thinking about you. And until we see you all again very, very soon, and we might have a huge surprise for you coming up of a guest. Take care. See you soon.
To a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.